Welcome to You and I Together, week 7. We are talking about entomophagy and is it a solution for possibly feeding the world? My name is Brad Stokes. I'm the U of I Extension educator specializing in horticulture and entomology here in Canyon County. My email address is right there at the bottom, bstokes@uidaho.edu. I love this photograph of this guy looking at this butterfly. So is he scared of it or does he want to eat it? We'll find out, okay? U of I Extension, we are practical education you can trust. We are bringing the knowledge of the University of Idaho and the research to you where you live when it's convenient for you, just like this Zoom series. We're working on issues that are important to you and Idaho in general, whether it's food production systems, 4-H youth development, and speaking of 4-H, this is Fair Week here. We focus on horticulture and small farms, community development, nutrition, health, and wellness, that FCS component, forestry and natural resources, and of course, water. And I will touch on water a little bit today. I have this short video we want to share with you.
University of Idaho Extension is growing Idaho's economy by improving sustainable food production systems while supporting ranchers and farmers. From livestock and forages to pest and disease management, variety development, small farms and food systems, and farm and ranch management, UI Extension is helping to build a better future.
So my name is Brad Stokes. I specialize in horticulture with a 10% 4-H youth development component. I am at the University of Idaho and I specialize in horticulture with a passion of entomology. That's what I got my master's degree in. And for over 6 years, I've been doing this kind of work. It's been very fulfilling. I have 2 wonderful dogs at home, Pepper, this black tricolor mini Aussie, and then Jack, he is my blue Merle mini Aussie. I love to do research. I love insects, volunteering, and teaching. Today, the outline, we're going to talk about, number 1, what is an arthropod? We'll talk about what is entomophagy, right? I'll touch on countries around the world that practice entomophagy. Sometimes they eat insects regularly. Sometimes they're considered a delicacy. Why should we eat insects? The input sources of maybe crickets versus traditional food. And by that, we'll talk about chicken, pork, and beef a little bit. The output levels. We will touch on nutrition. And I'll talk about cricket brownies or chips, and then mealworms. And then I put in here a couple survival stories. This is people that might have gotten lost in the woods and survived a few days by eating insects, which I thought was interesting. And then the human population, what we can expect to see by the year about 2100. Over here on the right too, we have some sushi insects, which I think look kind of tasty, right? And then bottom right are some cricket chips. Those cricket chips you can actually get on Amazon. I've tried them. They are pretty tasty, in fact, and they come in like 5 or 6 different flavors. So what is an arthropod? These are invertebrate animals. They don't have a backbone. They're considered joint-footed. That's what arthropod means. They have a segmented head. So the insects are going to have 3 segments, that head, thorax, abdomen. The arachnids and some of the crustaceans like lobsters are going to have a cephalothorax and an abdomen. They have pair-jointed appendages. And arthropod basically encompasses the groups of the insects, the primitive insects, the spiders, the mites, the centipedes, the millipedes, the crustaceans. A lot of us love crabs, lobsters, shrimp, that's seafood. That's a delicacy to me. It is important to note that all of these groups, they must molt in order to get to that next life stage. So they do have an exoskeleton. And here's some examples of our friendly arthropods. Top left, we have the ant, then we have the spider mite, we have our sow bug here in the center. Bottom right is a house centipede. We have our black widow top right. And then we have our delicious red lobster there, top center. And today I'm gonna try to persuade you into eating insects or trying it as a solution potentially to feeding the world. What is the difference between this lobster right here, this sow bug, and that ant? Okay. Arthropod biodiversity throughout the world. As far as biodiversity on Earth, arthropods are the most abundant, right? They have so many species. This beetle right here represents about 62% of all Earth's biodiversity. Okay, so we're talking about 1.1 million species. If you threw in the non-insect arthropods, those crustaceans, arachnids, we'd probably be about 71%. And they are really so abundant on Earth because of their cuticle, their tracheal system, their development, their small size, their short development times, those short generations, high reproduction. So those last couple kind of fit into what we might consider into insect farming or vertical farming and growing these creatures for food for the future. The insect biodiversity on Earth. For every human, we have 200 insects on Earth. The biomass, and I think this is kind of cool. The biomass on Earth for insects alone is about, give or take, 400 pounds per acre is in insects. As far as the total animal biomass on Earth, 50% or half is insects, and 33% of that include the ants and the termites. The biodiversity of insects alone on the Earth is amazing. So we're probably 2 to 80 million species. I would lean more towards that lower number, maybe 2.5 million. 1 in every 4 animals on Earth is a beetle. So Coleoptera, that beetle order, has 350,000 plus species. And then bottom, we have more than 2,000 different insect species that we could consider them edible to humans. So that's kind of cool, I think, in my opinion. And how do we benefit from arthropods? Okay, we already benefit as humans and as a society. We get these direct benefits. We can go and get honey from the store, right? This is delicious sweetener. We have silk, we have wax, we have the pollination of numerous, almost uncountable crops and fruits. Insects are scavengers, they're decomposers, they're food for wildlife, so fish. If you like to fish, you need mosquito larvae. And we can use them for food, or what we call entomophagy, okay? And then indirectly, insects, they are natural enemies of pests and they're parasitoids of other pest species. They're also beautiful. What's better than taking a hike in the mountains and seeing a bunch of butterflies pooled up at a little puddle? So there is some indirect benefits as well. Okay, so what is entomophagy? Entomo refers to insects, and phagy is the practice of eating them, specifically as humans. So it's the practice of eating insects, especially as people, as a viable and what I would call a potentially sustainable food source. I know it does seem weird, right? I think all of us as kids were told, don't eat that. But consider the other closely related arthropod food items. Earlier, we were talking crabs and lobsters, right? These are highly prized delicacies in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, and people pay big bucks to get their lobster tail at Red Lobster. So you might be 50, 60 bucks for a dinner like that. So what might be the difference between a lobster tail and what I showed earlier with some insect sushi, right? Another thing I like to touch on right here, in the southern United States, and actually in Idaho too, I do know some crawfish farmers or catch fishers, but there is what they call crawfish boils, right? They take all these crawfish, put them with corn, with seasonings, boil them up, and go and eat not only the claws, but the tail. But moreover, a lot of people will actually, quote, suck the head out, and it has all these great flavors, more protein. So that kind of does seem weird, but it's absolutely delicious if you hadn't had a crawfish boil before. This graph is a great little graph. It is showing who eats bugs around the world, what countries might practice entomophagy, and not only as a normal part of their everyday diet, but some of these countries that might use them as a delicacy. So we have 23 countries in the Americas, we have 36 countries in Africa, we have 11 countries in Europe, 29 countries in Asia, and then 14 countries in Oceania. So if you add that all up, you get 113 total countries around the world eat insects. And this is a part of their regular human diet. Basically, that's 58% of the world. So actually, we're in a minority because we don't eat insects, in my viewpoint. And I think this graph shows that around the world, it's really rare to not eat insects. So why eat them though? It's about production and resource utilization, okay? The input sources to farm a bunch of crickets are going to be very low. And whether we're talking crickets or mealworms or one of those 2,000 plus insect species, the water and the feed that's going to be inputted to grow these are going to be tremendously low. The output is going to be very, very high. So we're going to get a lot of kilograms or pounds, right? Also, the land area is very small. That is, you can have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of crickets or insects per square area, right? Per square acre or whatever. And then nutrition. Weirdly enough, the nutrition around insects, other crustaceans is very, very good. Very high in protein, very low in fat. So traditionally, it's really tasty. Well, not only tasty, but good nutritionally. They also have a lot of essential amino acids. And then I would call this at the very end sustainability. So if we're talking about feeding a growing population, we're going to have to get creative in the future, where if we have inputs are really, really low, outputs are very high, and the area is very small, this could be really sustainable into the future. I think of vertical farming as far as farming insects. So resources to raise insects are really low. This graph on the right is kind of cool. On the very right, we're talking about an adult cricket, right? So you need 1,700 grams of feed, and you need less than 1 liter of water. And this is to produce 1 kilogram of adult crickets, okay? And each of these next ones get higher and higher. So chicken, to produce 1 kilogram of chicken, 2,500 grams of feed. And look at the water. The water just jumps up. 2,300 liters of water. So that's about 1 chicken, right? And then if we go to pork and then beef, it just gets tremendous in the amount of inputs. And again, this is feed, this is hay, this is water, this is grass that they're going to eat. But the comparison between the cricket on the very right and the beef on the very left is amazing. And I've kind of summarized that in some graphs coming up. The overall message, though, is us as humans, we save on feed and especially water. I know this year we have quite a bit of water, but last year we were in a drought, okay? So comparing these is just really interesting to me, and I think it shows the sustainability aspect of entomophagy going forward into the future. Just like I said, I put that previous graph into an actual graph where on the y-axis we have our input sources, right? The water is this blue, and the feed is this green. So you can see that those adult crickets have almost no water that needs to be inputted, a lot less feed, and this is to produce that 1 kilogram, where chicken is up here, pork, a little more feed, and then you get into beef, and it's a lot more than those crickets, okay? Thirdly, the land use is very small, right? And also we know that insects have high reproductive rates. I also think of ease of management. You probably have less diseases, less problems with harvesting animals. Vertical farming will come into the future as well. Instead of growing out, we're going to grow up. I also believe the risk for the producer is going to be a little bit lower. And arable land. Where are we going to create more arable land? That is land we can farm with, we can ranch with into the future. So this graph is great as well. It has the cricket on the right, right? You need 15 square meters to produce that 1 kilogram of those adult crickets. Whereas you start going up with chickens, with pork, with beef, okay? So you can just see the difference is so different in such a smaller amount. Insect farming, we need to start thinking vertically. That is, instead of expanding outward, going up. So in fact, insect farms have a reduced environmental footprint as well. They're highly efficient in terms of water and that land footprint. Insect farming requires less of those arable land. And in this regard, most insect producers use crates that are aligned vertically. And this is kind of a great example of it, where you can put your feed and water in there, and these can go up 50, 60 feet or even higher. And if you're thinking big term, you could talk about stories, 30, 40 stories for an insect farm into the future. And then lastly, sustainability. I didn't touch on it, but we have greenhouse gas emissions, right? Climate change is a big thing going on, whether we have methane, CO2, nitrous oxide, fluorinated gases. These are going to be reduced with entomophagy, or at least in this example, farming with crickets, where greenhouse gases are going to be 1 gram for that 1 kilogram of adult crickets. Whereas look at beef, we're at almost 3,000 grams of greenhouse gases. So it's very, very minimal to farm crickets as compared to other food sources. So is this better for planet Earth in the long run? I think what I kind of showed with the water, the feed, the land use, the greenhouse gases, I think it could be sustainable into the future. And I think it probably is a mental thing that we need to get over as a country, okay? Next thing, let's talk about nutrition, okay? I have done some entomophagy displays or teaching with kids where we actually cook up some of these mealworms, saute them in some olive oil. But look at this. These mealworms have the protein content of beef. They have more vitamin B12 than eggs, okay? Good for the brain. They have vitamin B5 for your skin, choline for your liver, more fiber than broccoli, and then lots of essential amino acids, and then phosphorus for your teeth and bones. And we'll get more into the nutrition right now. So here are differences between a cricket steak and ground beef. Both of these are 100 grams. The thing I really wanted to focus on is the protein amount in a cricket steak, okay? So this is about triple the protein of what we would consider ground beef, right? That's protein. And also less saturated fat, which I think is interesting, as well as more carbohydrates. So kind of cool, right? The next graph kind of shows that same thing, those cricket steaks versus those ground beef. And look at the amino acids, and these are the essential amino acids that we need for bodily functions to be healthy. The cricket steak is 3 or 4 or 5 times that of ground beef. So that is quite interesting that these little crickets are packing in so many essential amino acids that it's got to be great for human nutrition and our health, right? We need all these for great functioning bodies, minds, and health. And then lastly, here's some other major nutrition things, right? We have calcium, iron. Look at the cricket steak on potassium. It's probably 3 or 4 times that of the ground beef. A little more sodium, so not that good. But look at your fats, omega-3 and omega-6. Lots of nutrition there. And then with cricket steak, you would get fiber, right? Ground beef is going to have no fiber, so this is good for excretion, right? We all do that. And then if you wanted to try insects as food, this is where I might push you in the direction, right? There are numerous companies that exist that are actually farming edible insects. This company right here, this Chirps, you can find them online. You can go to Amazon to find cricket flour. I actually have some in my office right here. It's just cricket powder. Gives you all the nutrition on the back. You can make this into brownies or cookies, and it's kind of fun to do. You can also go to local pet stores. Mealworm larvae, those are the mealworms they might feed to reptiles. But you can saute them in olive oil and garlic and impress your friends or freak them out or have a great little Halloween thing, right? But make sure to thoroughly wash those if you do get them from the pet store. But we've done the mealworms, I've done the brownies, I've done cookies. These chips, you almost can't tell the difference between other chips, like if you got some wavy Lays. And their nutrition is going to be better for you than those fried potato chips, let me tell you that. Lastly, or well, about near the last, what do insects taste like? This is kind of fun, and I was looking this up before this. Ants, they have an acidic taste, and depending on the species, they can have like a lemon or a lime-like taste. Grasshoppers, and I would put crickets in there as well. They kind of have a stronger taste, a savory umami like miso. They can taste earthy or a mushroom flavor. Crickets, they are flavor vehicles, right? Much like a potato chip. That's why they're really good as powder for baking, really. And most insects are going to be palatable, especially if they're combined with other strong flavor profiles. I think of onions, garlic, red pepper flakes, salt and pepper. Just like if you're going to make any dish at home, if you're going to try insects or entomophagy at home, give them a stronger component and you might not even be able to tell the difference. Some other things, some survival stories. I was looking this up online. I thought this was great too. This man survived on ants for 6 days in the Australian desert. And they found him. So he survived. He did good. What I would say, bugs saved the world for that guy. And then this one was in Idaho, I believe. Yeah. A 25-year-old was lost in the Idaho-Montana wilderness, and he survived for 5 days on grasshoppers and ants. And I liked his little quote that his mom said. He ate grasshoppers and ants, and he said, "Did you know the ants are kind of sweet?" So that was his mother that said that. So they can save the world, they can save humans. There are true survival stories. And not only this, we need to remember that most of the world really eats insects and practices entomophagy daily, if not weekly, okay? So why consider this? Why is this even a thought in our brains? The question is, how do you feed an ever-increasing human population, right? Here's the human population. Here's our X graph, and it's time. In 1700, we only had 600 million humans on Earth, okay? Right now in 2023, we're almost at 8 billion. We're like 7.9 billion humans. By the year 2100, it could be 10.5 billion. It could be 11 billion. Who knows? It could be 12 billion humans. So how do you feed an ever increasing and what I would call an exponential population? I think that entomophagy is something that we should consider, especially as a first world country, into the future. Not only for feeding us, but for using water, feed, land area very wisely, and also greenhouse gases that I was mentioning earlier. Yeah. So I would like to thank you. And if you have any questions, my name is Brad Stokes with UVI Extension. I'm in Canyon County. My email address is bstokes@uidaho.edu.